All right. Well, thanks for joining and welcome to the Crexi Podcast, where we discuss all things commercial real estate. I'm Eli Randel, and I'm honored to be here as a guest in his studio with Kyle Matthews, founder, chairman, CEO, Matthew Real Estate Investors. Kyle, how you doing?
I'm good.
Good. Thanks for having us here. Appreciate the hospitality in your beautiful studio.
And I'm happy to get use out of it.
Great. And I should note you seem to be the most famous person in commercial real estate. Out to dinner last night, we were noticed by multiple people. It was very interesting.
Yeah, it's, they were paid actors. I just want you to know that.
Awesome. I suspected so much. Well, let's start off. Will you give us your origin story? Where'd you grow up? What kind of kid were you?
So I'm from planet Earth. And no, I'm just joking. I had an interesting childhood. I had a blessed childhood. I grew up in a couple different places, believe it or not. So Cleveland, Ohio, Los Angeles, California, and Atlanta, Georgia. And it's no mystery, no secret why. My dad is Clay Matthews Jr. He's a football player. So he played for the Cleveland Browns for 16 years, I want to say, and then the Falcons for 3 or 4 after that. And what that meant as a kid was, and this was a very unique part, it's even unique to the NFL, was during the season, we would move to where he played, which predominantly was Cleveland. So from, mid to late July all the way to the end of the season, usually, December 31st, let's call it, I would live in Cleveland, specifically Strongsville, Ohio, until I was about 13. And then in the off season, we would, as soon as the season was over, or the regular season, sometimes they would go deep into playoffs, but we would be back in LA. So we'd move back to Southern California. And we did that till I was 13. And then when my dad finished his career with the Falcons, we did that same cadence, but instead of Cleveland, it went to Atlanta, Lilburn, Georgia, to be specific. And so I, again, I grew up in Cleveland, Atlanta, LA. I moved every 6 months of my life until my dad retired from football. I was, I believe, around 16 years old. So, he had a 19-year career. I think pretty confident he's played the most games in NFL history as a linebacker, 280, 290, somewhere around there. And every 6 months we'd move back and forth. And the good news is most of the time I'd be going back to the same school, but not always. There were 4 or 5 times you get dropped in a new school, and so that was always a challenge, to fit in. And I'm sure we'll dive in later. It's developing emotional intelligence. I'm confident that all those moves ultimately helped me, at least in my professional career. There certainly were moments as a kid where your parents were like, all right, hey, we're moving, we're going, packing up and going somewhere different. That was, that was tough. But even at a young age, I kind of learned that, happiness is a choice, and you could either look at a move and be committed to being upset and miserable about it, or you could look at it as a new opportunity to meet new friends and see something new. And over time, I developed that. And again, that also, I think, helped me later on in life. But I think you asked the question what my childhood was like. Moved around a lot, played a lot of sports. Played 4 seasons for soccer, baseball, basketball, later on football. And I have 4 siblings. I have an older sister, and I got 3 younger brothers. And so the house was chaotic. It was a very intense house. I would describe Matthews as Spartans, like it's a calling, so to speak. Our house was very fun in that it was like the YMCA. At all times, everybody had a friend at the house. So even though there were 5 kids, there were always 10 to 15 at the house. And my mom, bless her heart, as they say in the South, she was always feeding them to everybody. So it kept them coming back. In our house had the most snacks and candy. So, that also was a plus. But
any of those snacks or candy stand out? Any that still come to mind?
Hopefully my kids don't listen to this, because I don't let them eat sugar cereal, because I think now we're aware that it's probably not good for you to be crushing Lucky Charms and Fruity Pebbles. But like we had we had the whole sugar cereal aisle. We had any type of chips, candy, Snickers, Twix, Skittles, ice cream, juice, soda, everything. I mean, it's amazing that the Matthews are, I'll speak for the other guys, as big and strong and fast as they are, given our diet intake. But but we figured it out. But yeah, it was a fun childhood. It was a very active, in sports and moving and people at the house, and there just was never a dull moment. I know that's a cliche saying. There was never a dull moment, and there was always energy and noise and chaos. But it's when it's all you've ever known. It's normal, and it was a lot of fun. I'm again, like I said at the start, very, very blessed.
And how to having that last name shape your path? I'm assuming you were pretty well known in these communities. Any also career ambitions you can remember at an early age?
Yeah, being a Matthews is a blessing. Like on a net basis, it's a privilege. It's a privilege that I didn't earn, and it was given to me. So that also comes with a responsibility, and I could touch on that in a second. But it was a privilege. Yes, it was, especially in Cleveland and Georgia, but even in LA, they're just, everybody knows, and that's cool. And it created unique experiences in that as a kid, you got to kind of evaluate. Your emotional intelligence has to increase quick, because not everybody who was your friend was maybe your friend for the right reasons, like because they actually liked you. Maybe it's because they were looking for access, invite to the games, like go to locker room after, meet players. And again, it wasn't all that, but there's certain of that. The challenge was there were some kids who didn't like it. And especially, again, my childhood wasn't terrible at all, but in the mid 90s, there was still bullying and you still could get your ass kicked. And so that happened. I was really small at the time. Luckily I grew, but as a kid, I was very small and very skinny. And, you get dropped into a new school, and especially if you're culturally not necessarily from there. And then they find out that, your dad is some NFL star. So, some kids didn't take likely to that. So I had to figure that out and, either get them to like me as quickly as possible or just avoid them as much as I could. But yeah, it was different. We were talking earlier, somehow we were talking about, it's like you go out to dinner and, you very quickly realize that everybody in the restaurant is aware that you're there. And it's just a different experience. And all told, it was awesome. It's how many people get to watch their dad work on Sunday, right? And so that was really cool. But because, again, not to keep saying the same thing, but because it's all I knew, it was very normal. And as I got older, you look back and you have perspective, or you hope you get perspective, and the perspective teaches you that wasn't normal, and you can start to kind of understand how it wasn't. But as a kid, you're like, yeah, my dad plays football at a very high level. We move every 6 months. Everybody's always kind of coming at us for whatever reason. I'll tell you another hard thing was, again, there's a lot of benefits. One of the drawbacks now, there isn't social media, thank God, at the time, but there's sports talk radio. And, we had a lot of kids, and we didn't have a ton of help in the sense of like all these nannies or whatever. So inevitably with 2 parents and 5 kids, you're often carpooling. You're carpooling to school, or you're carpooling home from, practice. And a lot of the parents, especially in a Cleveland or something, would put on sports talk radio, and having someone talk about your dad, sometimes positively, sometimes negatively, was, even though, again, I said it was normal, that could be tough. Your dad, he makes the best effort he can on a Sunday, but maybe he misses that tackle, or he drops the pick, or he gets a penalty, and having a bunch of lazy slob DJs on the radio just ripping your dad, saying, hey, they should cut him. It's like, well, that's my dad's job. And you're basically on the radio saying you should fire my father. And that as a 9-year-old kid, that it takes, it's hard to compartmentalize that. And I still have a lot of resentment towards those people, just hearing them very casually, recommend to a very broad audience that your dad should be fired from his job, that, things like that. And again, there was no social media, but I've been blessed to have a lot of brothers and cousins who still play in the league. And social media by then, but again, I was older, so I just didn't look, but there's blessings of it. And then there's also like, you go on Twitter and read what someone posts about one of your younger brothers. Like if they ever said that in real life, you beat the shit out of them. And, but you can't do that. So you just got to you just work through it.
And is that where some of that work ethic came from? I'm assuming on the field, you and your siblings had targets on your back. People wanted to, make a name for themselves with a big hit on a Matthews. Is that where you guys had to work all the more harder just to live up to the name and to overcome some of that?
Look, the Matthews play so long in the NFL with us because we don't get hit. We avoid it now. Certainly I could only imagine, kids. How about parents? Like, hey, my boy beat the Matthews kid in, a foot race or a tackle or whatever. But a couple of things in there to unpack. You target on the field, I'm certain of it. Like, I would say as a kid, probably less aware of that than I would have been as a parent, But the work ethic part, that's a culture of our family. And I get asked this question a lot about football and like, oh, did your dad put pressure on you to play football? No, like 0%. In fact, they didn't even sign me up for football. I signed myself up in 9th grade. I didn't play football till high school. I played soccer. That was my fall sport, and probably should have stuck with that, right? But there was no pressure. In fact, I think when I was in high school and I was, the opportunity to play in college at USC was presented to my dad. I think one time casually he's like, hey, you don't have to play football because I played. I was like, yeah, I know, Dad. He goes, okay, cool. Like that was the conversation, and so it wasn't. We never were pressured to do anything other than whatever we chose to do. You had to go 100%. That was the only rule. There was no the amount of love and affection my parents showed us as kids, which was a lot, had nothing to do with the amount of goals you scored or baskets, points you put up or touchdowns. It had nothing to do with that. They rooted for us. I'm sure they cheered when we scored. But the only judgment that came from our parents was effort. And there was an expectation. It was clearly communicated to us, just to be clear, that you had to go 100% at all times. And that if you didn't do that, there would be problems. Other than that, you just gave your maximum effort. And, parents can tell. And luckily, I'll speak for myself, my sister, and my brothers. We never called their bluff. I would say we did go full speed. And that was it. That was the only requirement. That was the only rule. That was the only expectation in the Matthews household. So ultimately, to your question, what that led to when you go from playing a sport, as a kid or teenager to playing a sport as an adult, which, ideally as a metaphor is your career. When I got into real estate, I just knew the only thing I really had to focus on was going full speed. And, for full speed for me may be different than full speed for someone else, but full speed for me was getting in the office at 6 a.m., staying till 8:30, in brokerage. Early on, you have no business. You start by making cold calls to set meetings, and made more cold calls than anyone, set more meetings than anyone, pitch more deals than anyone. And eventually I got better and started actually winning business and executing. It wasn't a fast start, but again, getting back to your question, yeah, being a Matthews, there was an understanding that you were going to go 100% at all times. And ultimately that I guess created the work ethic that I have today. Did I answer your question?
You did, yeah. Yep. Thank you. Those principles could apply in any field. So why real estate? How did you end up in the industry? Was it something you always gravitated towards, or did you stumble upon it?
Yeah. My dad owns a 24-unit apartment building that he bought from my mom's father, his father-in-law. He was going to sell it, and my dad was like, hey, why don't I buy? He's like, yeah, sure. And they probably handshake, agreed on a price, and he purchased it. And that was really the main investment he had from real estate. Again, the Matthews family, we weren't sitting around talking about, investment portfolios and stocks and bonds and all that. But because I was the oldest boy, there's privileges that come with the oldest boy. You get invited to the movies with your dad. You might go to a game with your dad. But the downside is I had to go do the dirty work, which again, it's not that dirty, but it's Saturday. My dad's like, hey, we got to go to the apartment building to collect the laundry coins. Like back then, all laundry was just coins. Nowadays, I think it's mostly cards, right? But, he had this routine every month. And this is what I remember. He was replacing the roof. He's like, we need to go to the building and we're going to go look at the roof replacement. And again, I'm 9, I'm 12, I'm 15. I'm not really interested. But while there, you just can't help yourself to, maybe he's eliciting the conversation. Maybe I'm just asking a random question like, hey, Dad, what is this building? He's like, well, this is an apartment building. Who are these people? And he's like, well, these are people, each of them live in a unit. You know, some are 1 bedroom and 1 bath. Some are 2 bedroom and 1 bath, 2 bedroom, 2 bath. And they pay me rent every month. And I'm in my head, I'm making this conversation up, but I know it happened. It's like, well, what's rent? It's like, well, they pay me money every month. And I do remember thinking, so let me get this straight. You own this building and these people live here and every month they have to pay you rent. Well, that's pretty cool. I want to do that. I want to own a building where people give me money every month. Like as I've gotten older, I found out it's much more complicated. There, you need a lot of capital. There's management responsibilities. There's risk, right? But as a simple-minded, 12-year-old kid, I was like, wait, so they just give you money every month? I want to do that. And so that actually is where my enthusiasm, my interest, my what eventually developed into a love of real estate came from was, non-football related. That was the only exposure I had to any real investment class. No one think about this. My grandfather played football for the 49ers. He ended up having a very successful professional career. As he ended up becoming CEO of a publicly traded company, but he was much older. I wasn't born yet. So I didn't have access. I just knew he played football and all that. And then my dad played football. My uncle played football. That was the males, right? And then, and this was before even my brothers and cousins. So like all the Matthews family, all I really knew was football. So there wasn't really access to what I call the professional world or the financial world. No one with the last name Matthews that I knew wore a suit and tie to work, right? And so the only exposure I actually had to a white collar professional services industry was real estate by way of this one building where, simply put, I was like, these guys give you money every month. That's so cool. So if you probably asked me at 15, I had zero consideration on what I was going to do in my life. But if I forced to answer, I'd be like, real estate. So the answer to your question, how did I, really get into real estate, or how did that kind of come about, was this random building my dad owned, and me, I know I protested. Like my dad's like, hey, you got to go with me. I'm like, why do I have to go? Why doesn't Brian go, or Clay or Casey? It's like, well, you're the oldest. That's what you do. But in many ways that opened my eyes and lit the spark that eventually, again, became a love of this industry of commercial real estate.
Love that. So you went back to your home base, which was LA, at the end of high school, and you went to USC, go Trojans, and played ball there. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
After USC, you began your career in real estate. It's pretty well known you had a prolific brokerage career. Did you hit the ground running in the early years in the industry, or did you run into a learning curve?
No, it hit the ground running. I just hit the ground. That's the best way I could put it. So let me just make this simple. I started in October 2004, and I closed my first deal in March of 2006. So it was 17 to 18 months. I don't know the exact start dates, but it was a very, very slow start. It was the slowest start. And I went to a training class at the company I was at of, 60 people from around the country. And there were 5 or 6 people just in my office. And I was the last in every group, in every metric, other than cold calls and hours. I'm saying, like, I was the last to earn his first listing. I was the last to put a deal under contract. I was the last to close a deal. I was dead last in everything other in outputs and results. I was first in inputs, in hours and calls and meetings and proposals. And so really that's a testament to how bad I was at brokerage, right? That I was putting the most in and getting the least out. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I didn't have a real estate finance degree. I really didn't have any background in real estate. No one in my family was effectively a real estate professional. I didn't have any relationships. I had no sales experience, and I am naturally not a sales personality. I've developed it over the years, but I am a very by nature shy and introverted person. And so in many ways I couldn't be worse for the job I chose, but that amongst many reasons contributed to a very, very difficult start, as a non-start, right? But eventually I figured it out, and eventually, I did okay.
Was there an aha moment, or it was just a maturation in the process that had to unfold?
No, it just there were moments, but not like I went from bad to good. There were moments that made me from bad to not as bad and not as bad to okay and okay to solid and solid to good and good to great. And hopefully my goal was always to be the greatest of all time, and I'll have that conversation with whoever wants to have it. And it's, when it closed my first deal, okay, that was a moment where it was just a monkey off my back. Like, again, there's a quote, and I'm going to butcher it, and maybe you could Google it or something. It's like, in your 20s, you think everyone's talking about you. In your 40s, you think no one's talking about you. In your 60s, you realize they never were talking about you. Something like that. But in my 20s, it was like, everyone's talking about how I haven't closed a deal. It's just people in their 20s is super self-absorbed. And I was too. Like, everybody's talking about it. Everybody's laughing behind my back. Like, whatever narrative I had to spin up in my head to create whatever motivation I needed. You see it in the athlete community often. It's like, yeah, the whole world doubted us. And it's like, no, you didn't. You're the preseason favorites to win the Super Bowl. What are you talking about? But like, you create these narratives in your head as to why everyone's doubting you, like whatever gets you up. But there wasn't like an aha moment when I closed my first deal. The first time I earned at the company I was at like a sales award. The first time I closed a certain size deal, a certain size check. Like they're just little milestones, is what I call them. Little level ups. But it's a process. It's an evolution. It's an individual evolution of who you are as a professional, and some of that is sales skills. Some of that is certain product knowledge, right? Some of that is just confidence by saying, "Hey, I've been here before and I've won. I've taken this shot and I made it. Like, I have earned a listing. I have closed a deal. I have made this benchmark, this sales war. Like, I've done it before, which means I can do it again. And then every time you just kind of go a level up, and it reset. I always say you move your own goalposts. It creates a new normal, and you keep climbing that mountain.
I love the imagery of a young Kyle Matthews putting.
Well, hold on. Let me set that imagery. I speaking of lack of experience, I probably was wearing like a pink shirt, a yellow tie, taupe suit,
very Miami Vice.
Yeah, but I wasn't even trying to be Miami. Like, my Miami Vice is like that's a choice. I wasn't even making the choice. Like, I was just broke. And I had no fashion sense. And like, even if I was the most qualified, I walk in the door, people are like, I ain't hiring this guy, So I found a picture recently. I think I posted it on, what was that?
You posted it on Twitter.
Yeah, I posted on Twitter like, I don't know, 6 months ago. It was the only picture I have of like that era. And it's so bad, man. It's so bad. Like, man, I must have been working hard to have overcome my fashion sense at the time. So
we'll edit that picture in post-production.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah, for sure. Any mentors along the way, at least in this era? We'll talk later about being a business builder and who helped steer you. But this era, any mentors?
I had two. Both have passed unexpectedly, unfortunately. So my dad's best friend, Jim Hasty, Uncle Jimbo, he was actually a residential real estate agent. And so if I had any access to real estate, it was through him. Now, I did, I knew he was in real estate, but again, I just wasn't mentally plugged in at the time. But he was someone I very near and dear to me and my family. And he had a little brokerage, but I didn't even know it was a brokerage business until I had a brokerage business one day. And we lost him about 15 years ago to cancer. And so that was, he was a mentor the first couple of years, and then unfortunately lost him. And then. But again, he wasn't a direct mentor like in my office. He was just someone I could call, once a month or two. And then the other one wasn't a direct mentor. I've never had a direct mentor. So in that sense, like, no, I don't have someone like that in my life. I've never had someone. I don't have a board. I don't have advisors. Like, I just kind of follow my gut. But there are a lot of people who've helped along the way, and another guy who helped along the way and provided some mentorship, whether he wanted to or not. There's a guy, John Walsh. And John was the number one agent at the company I started at, Marcus & Millichap, and I looked up to him tremendously. A very tough guy, very like in the sense like if you said something dumb around him, he would eat you alive. If you didn't have a valid argument behind a position, he would chop it up into a million pieces. But I learned that way, and I don't know. I can't have this conversation again. I lost John a couple of years ago to suddenly, and I don't know if he signed up. It's like, oh, I'm going to go out of my way to mentor this guy. But I think I was I just wouldn't let him not. It's like I always found a way to walk into his office and ask him a question. He wasn't my senior. We didn't really work on very many deals. I think we had 1 or 2 deals in our whole life, but he was an SC guy. And then weirdly enough, one of my brothers got drafted to the Packers. He was from Green Bay, Wisconsin. So like we always had that connection. But John was a mentor to me by watching him and watching how he approached his business. And he was a Terminator, dude. He was the most efficient professional I've ever met, and I do my best to model and emulate that mindset. But I also have my own style. And then another guy, again, someone who helped me tremendously. I mean, he gave me a start, is Jonathan Weiss. He was a hiring manager of the office I was hired to in Encino. Very accomplished agent who became a very accomplished executive at Marcus at the time. He hired me. So just simply put, he gave me an opportunity. CBRE did not hire me. Cushman & Wakefield did not hire me. So, there's an agent at CB. I don't know where he is today. I'm sure he's in the business. Sean Daisy, I think, said, I don't think he'll be successful. So what's up, Sean? And there's a guy, Joe Vargas at Cushman. I don't know if he's in the business. I'm sure he is. What's up, Joe? It's Marcus. They hired me. So a lot of love for that company and a lot of love for Jonathan Weiss, who took a shot. And then Jonathan was the manager of the office. So I'd say if there's a direct role, it would probably mostly be Jonathan Weiss, who's retired, very, very, very successful guy. Retired, him and his wife Jody, up in this gorgeous house in Montecito, living the good life. So I always enjoy my trips up there. And when I talk to Jonathan, so those are the 3. And then of course my father, my dad, Clay. He's always been, my hero. He's always been my mentor, like my life mentor. But it's like my dad's mindset in life is like you never self-promote, which in sales is hard. I've had to actually do better at that. It's like social media. I never had it because I was like, why would I just go around like posting pictures of myself or like, hey, I did this or we did that. It's very unnatural because of how we were raised. It's the furthest thing. My dad couldn't be more uncomfortable with that, and he raised us that way. So his mentality, and he would say, it's like let your play do your talking, and he meant that from a literal sense of like in the NFL, you literally like he's like I'll let my play do my talking. I'm not going to go out and promote myself for Pro Bowls or All Pros or even he missed the Hall of Fame last year in the NFL by like 1 vote, right? And he won't go out and promote himself. My sister, credit to her, Jennifer, she's a savage. She's the savage. She's an animal, man. She single-handedly made that happen and got my dad's name out there and promoted him and like got him to the doorsteps, and he just missed. So, maybe next year we'll have a party in Canton at some point. But he just was always like, let your play do your talking. And so, that plus the effort, plus just modeling his behavior, very much a mentor, a life mentor, not necessarily a real estate brokerage. I think I asked my dad for business advice when I started, and he, very casually said, make more money than you spend. And so I've always tried to do that.
Great. Good advice.
Yep.
So before we move on from brokerage, is there a memorable deal that comes to mind? One that stands out to you? Maybe you wish you were on the sales side or the buy side. Is there, one that's a mental trophy in your trophy case?
Yeah, there's one deal that stands out. It was, it's not for good reasons, but, in terms of value, oftentimes the lesson's more valuable than the check. So it's a deal that didn't make, but I remember it very vividly, as you will shortly see. It was October to 2005, and this deal was under contract. It was Flair Plaza in El Monte. The seller was Sonnenblick Del Rio, Bob Sonnenblick, and the buyer was Shaul Levy Enterprises, 233 West Wilshire Boulevard in Santa Monica. I remember the office. And it was a $7 million deal at a 4-point fee. And there's another agent on it. And, with a 50-50, I was going to net like $70,000 as a 23-year-old. I mean, I changed life changing.
A lot of money.
It was a lot of money today.
Yep.
All right. So, and it was a good deal. It should have made. And, we went non-refundable with like $500,000, which again, follow me. If you're not in real estate, just know that increases the probability of deals closing to like 99%. When a buyer has $500,000, that if they walk away, and keep in mind, this is 2005. The market is roaring. Every deal is being closed, is successfully closing.
Yep.
So in my head, new agents have this problem anyway. You can start count paycheck. I mean, you get a listing, you start counting that paycheck, right? But I started counting that paycheck, and I said, okay, like I'm already the last to, get a listing. I'm the last to put a deal under contract, and I'll be the last to close one. But I'll close one. It'll be a big one. It'll change my life. It'll release some of my financial anxiety of just not having money and being in debt and all that. But it was the day before Thanksgiving now. Deal had been non-refundable for a certain amount of time. And I get a call, let's just call it November 25th. And I get a call from the buyer show. And he goes, hey, Kyle, like I want to cancel the deal. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I talked to one of the tenants and they're not doing well. And, the seller knows this and he's been hiding it from me. I want to cancel it. And it's like, well, Shao, first of all, in the contract, it said you couldn't talk to the tenants. Number two, every tenant's going to tell you that. What do they say? Hey, I'm crushing it. Feel free to raise my rent, And number three, look, you have $500,000 hard, like you're not going to walk away. And I'm going to just paraphrase it. He said, yeah, he's like, none of that matters. I'm going to get my money back. And if the seller tries to take it, I'm going to tie you up in court for 3-4 years and I'll sue you and your firm personally too. It was pretty aggressive. And I just remember like I was at my parents' house because it was the day before Thanksgiving. I didn't have kids. So I was like going to sleep in my old bedroom, right? Just be around family. And I just kind of like sat down. And I was like, what do I do? So I called the seller and Bob was like, you know what? Screw this guy. Like cancel, give him his money back. I don't even want to deal with this. You know what? I'm going to keep the property. The market's on fire. And deal's off. And that was it. And, I never had the money, so I don't want to say I lost it, but it felt like a loss. It felt like someone ripped that out of my hands. And I had this moment. So again, you asked what deal stands out. This deal stands out. I had this moment. I'm 12 months in. I didn't have any other listings at the time. And this was the only deal. And it wasn't a listing. It was just some off-market deal that came about. And it was just this moment, like, what am I going to do? And I'll tell you, I never thought about quitting. And that's, I don't have anything in common with quitters. I don't like quitters. I don't want to be around them. I want nothing to do with them. I think quitting is a contagious disease and I don't want to get infected with it. And I've never quit. But because I never was going to quit, it wasn't even an option. It's not an option in the Matthews family. I just kind of had this acceptance, like, this sucks. It's going to be hard. It's going to be even harder than you thought. It's going to be the hardest thing you ever did. I mean, mentally harder than my time at USC in football. We could talk about that. It's, physically that was clearly much harder, but it is what it is. So stop fucking feeling sorry for yourself. Stop crying. You're not a victim. Toughen up. Be the guy that you think you are, and just move forward. And that's the deal.
It must help when mom has Cinnamon Toast Crunch downstairs.
Yeah, that's my comfort food. Yeah, just cinnamon Cocoa Puffs. No, Cocoa Pebbles, because you could eat the Cocoa Pebbles, and then the milk would turn to chocolate milk. So yeah, no,
love them.
Yeah, it's like, what do they say? You're drinking to celebrate, or you're drinking to commiserate. It's like I was eating Cocoa Pebbles because I was sad, but I guess it did help.
Good. Any specific lesson learned from that? Was it just reinforcing the not giving up mentality?
So let me tell you, like, yeah, there's a practical lesson and then there's like a metaphorical lesson. So I talk to all the brokers who might be listening, and really anybody, but like, let's talk real estate brokerage. So you think about a deal like that and you say, how in the world could that have been my fault as the broker? How could I have known that buyer would just kind of go crazy or get cold feet? And what I tell brokers, and I know this to be true, it's not even a feeling, it's not even belief, it's not even a theory, is every deal that falls out of contract is your fault. Every deal. Because looking back, it's not an expectation you could have flushed it out, but looking back, you always see a path. Oh, wait, I could have found that out ahead of time. And what I could have done, is I asked better questions about his funding, about his lender, about his LPs. Like, have they been to the real estate? Have they seen the real estate? What are their yield expectations? Or in this, what are your expectations about the tenant's performance? Will you move forward with the deal if you talk to the tenants and they say they're not doing well? How about this? Just simply put, next time a buyer goes hard with $500,000 non-refundable, have it pass through from escrow into the seller's account. You can do that. It's called pass-through deposit. I didn't know that. I mean, I knew it, but I didn't battle for it. I wasn't a good broker. I said, well, it's hard, right? Because like the contingencies got waived, but possession is 9/10 of the law. And the title company's not going to get in the middle of that. They're not going to decide who, winners and losers. They'll just file an interpleader and say, I'll let the courts decide. And It's so there's always something I could have done. So there was a lot of brokerage lessons within that. Now at the time I probably didn't even see those. I was just like, I got screwed. But yeah, the metaphorical, the less tangible lesson was manage your expectations as it relates to counting your money. Like that lesson taught me you should not count that money until the money is wired into your company's account and they hand you a check and you deposit the check and those funds actually clear. And that's when if you still are mentally in a place you want to celebrate, that's when you celebrate, right? Most of the time it's just a relief, but yeah, there's always, every deal, there's something you can learn.
Yep. Great lesson. So moving on to another chapter in your career, after a prolific brokerage career early on following college, a lot of accolades, and people can look at your bio and see all the awards won. You, in about 2015, I believe, decide to build your own brokerage business. Tell us about that and tell us what's similar between building a brokerage and being a broker, and perhaps what's different as well.
So, I've shared this story more recently as I become more active on social media. So, Zach, give me a follow. Twitter, LinkedIn. Instagram.
We can say TikTok, but we don't really post. It's just
I have a TikTok.
clips.
I have a TikTok. This is great.
Do you want to drop all those? Drop the podcast as well?
Yeah,
let's drop them all in.
Yeah,
Plug them all.
Matthews Mentality Podcast. Give it a follow.
Best podcast in the game.
Hell yeah. 2015, I've told this story, so forgive me if I'm, repeat. I try and condense it down. So I'll set the stage. In 2014, I was at a company, Colliers International, big international company. I was their number one producer globally, and it's a big, was having a lot of success. I think we were a top team globally. I had a couple of young guys underneath me that were learning, and everything was going great, making a ton of money, and had no motivation. I've never had a vision to start my own company. It's never been an aspiration for me. So again, just to be clear, there are some people who are born and they say, one day I want to found a company. I want to be this. That was not me. I had a great gig. I was doing very well. Not a comfortable life. I was working like a total psycho. But I'm married. I think at the time I had 2 kids already, and just just working really hard, experiencing tremendous success. And in the beginning part of 2015, again, I'm going to keep this short. Got a call that said, "Hey, we're going to go public." And part of going public, Colliers was owned, I think it was called First Service. They were going to split off Colliers. And as part of going public, they were doing this kind of P roll-up strategy where they were buying a bunch of boutique companies around, well, I guess the globe, but like in the U.S., around the U.S., in markets that they didn't have coverage or they were light in coverage. And part of their deals, they were kind of agreeing to, let's call it exclusive market coverage rights. I'm going to use an example. They buy this company, Houston Realty Advisors. This isn't a real place, but and they would, okay, here's your money up front, here's your earn out, here's your contracts, and then they would say, okay, and we'll give you exclusive market coverage. So no one within the Colliers network can do a deal in Houston unless you get half the fee or whatever they agreed to. Well, what was unique about my business more than anyone else at Colliers, they really didn't have any other retail advisors, no one who did any business anyway, and most other product types are very local. Multifamily is very local. You're not going to be a multifamily in LA and do a deal in Houston. Okay, that doesn't. Even if you had a seller who wants to sell in Houston, you'd be like, look, I can't handle that. Let me go out and find you the right guy, and maybe I'll get a referral. Same with industrial or leasing, or even in the debt side, it's less relevant. But my business is retail. First of all, retail itself, multi-tenant retail shopping centers, it's not a dense product. Okay, so even in a county, there might only be 30, 40, 50 properties. Now, LA County is a big county, but 30, 40, 50 properties that would fall. So oftentimes you're working, whole states, if not regions of the country, right? Especially when you get to a more institutional, like a grocery anchored product. You in the Southeast, you might be working 3, 4 states. And so that product, the business plan that is necessitated by a very like non-dense product type like shopping centers doesn't align with the business plan of a Colliers where they're saying, hey, we're going to give exclusive market coverage rights. And on top of that, I had some young professionals that had reached out to me over the years saying, hey, can you teach me the business? Can you mentor me? And I said, yes. And here's the structure. And then I started teaching them. And shopping center is very, very complex. So I said, hey, like, let's put you in single tenant net lease retail. One lease. What's the term? What's the credited tenant? Double, triple net. What are the rent to sales if we have access? So again, it's not the most complicated product. So they were able to get off the ground pretty quick. And so we had I had a really big shopping center business and a growing net lease business that are both geographic. We were doing deals in 30, 40 states a year. I think my last year at Colliers, we might have had 130, 140 deals over 33 states. Well, again, so now Colliers is coming to us saying, hey, we're going to enforce this. This is what we're agreeing to because we're going to go public. And so now you got to start paying the local market guys up to half your fee. That's a non-starter. They're not adding any value. They don't even really know the product. They have no market share. And my attitude was like, if this was their market, how could I have ever earned this deal, right? What should happen is if I'm in LA and I'm calling, I'm talking to a Blackstone about their portfolio and, I see on their sheet, they say, hey, we're going to be selling a deal in Houston. And I say, oh, well, what about that? They're like, well, Kyle, like, yeah, that's in Houston as a sale. But if we're going to use this company, we're going to use, Joe and Susie down in Houston because they're the best. But I never had that conversation. No one ever brought anyone else up. And so, and if we have great representation in the market, I would bring them in because I saw value. It's just there were a lot of markets we didn't. And so they came and they're like, hey, this is going to change. This is something you have to do. I said, that's not happening. They're like, well, yes, it is. This is a new policy. I said, no, it's not. It's, what happens if you try and enforce this? I'm going to leave. And that was effectively, that was how it happened. And so, I'm at this big company, they're just like, I said, look, I think I got to go. And it was very amicable. It was very above board. Like there were a lot of discussions. There was no secret. And we all kind of agreed like, it's a bummer, but you guys, Colliers is going to go on and do great with their IPO, which they did. They did phenomenal. They crushed it. And they were like, look, you're going to go on and do great. It was a very amicable divorce, if that's it. Just creative differences, I think is what they call it. Irreconcilable differences. And so it was like, all right, well, let me go see, I don't want to start my own company. That wasn't even something I was thinking about. I was like, let me go see, but CBRE was the same thing. JLL was the same thing. And like, I don't even think they understood what I did. And then I wasn't going to go back to where I started. That didn't make sense. And everything else was a boutique. And I said, I'm basically running a boutique. Why don't I just start my own thing? And that was the idea of Matthews. It was, okay, I'm just going to start my own thing. I had, they gave me a couple weeks to get my office space ready and have conversations, see whoever wanted to go. And everybody came with me. And that was it. It was not a strategy. It was not this big vision I had. It was, again, not a victim. I could have stayed and, gave a bunch of people money they didn't deserve. But I just said, yeah, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't pencil, not just for me, but for my younger teammates who are looking to build their business. Like that would be really detrimental to them. And let's just start a boutique. My idea was like, look, if it's successful, we could keep it, a little boutique. If for whatever reason down the road, we want to just wrap it back into another bigger company, we could always do that. Definitely had no clue it would become what it is today, like zero. But that's the story of Matthews. That's I think your question was like, hey, why'd you start your company? That's why.
It's amazing. It's certainly been successful. The growth is amazing. Still very actively hiring. How many markets are you in today? How many brokers does that comprise? Yeah,
we have 22 offices around the country and growing fast. Brokers were right around 700 agents, and they're agents in the sense, independent contractors. They deploy into markets or product types where we see opportunity for deployment. And then we also, just as important as the agents, we have it's all one company, but I always say we have it's almost like a different company. We have the platform. The platform is traditional employees. It's property marketing. It's creative. It's social media. It's transaction management. It's HR, legal, compliance.
We got Zach over here.
Big Zach on in the social media game, just making it happen. So it's the engine. The agents are the car. It's what you see on the outside. It's real pretty and like it's it drives. And then there's the engine. And it's like how does this car perform? It's going to be a function of the engine. And sometimes I say the platform is like the foundation of a house. Like it is the most important part, but you never see it. It's what's the first part of a house? You drive by, It's the foundation. It's that concrete slab that if that ever went wrong, doesn't matter how beautiful and how fancy that house is, it's going to fall down. And the foundation of this company is the platform. And then, the curb appeal is the agents.
Yep. Love it. So you're still very actively hiring. I know training and recruiting is really important to you. It's in part what you're passionate about. What's a common thread you see in a great agent or a great hire? What are the attributes you think tend to be consistent with them?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. We've spent so much time and energy and probably money over the years trying to find the Rosetta Stone to good hires on the sales side, like what makes a great agent. I mean, that would save us so much time, energy, and money, and we've never found it. And so, we do, like, don't get me wrong, we do the personality surveys, we do the certain questions in in interviews, like, what's the greatest adversity you overcome, like, why do you need to be successful? We do all that. We nowadays we're like, hey, part of the process, you got to come in and shadow an agent. We don't want what agents do and really just how hard they work and the shock of making cold calls. Because like most people, the only way to generate business is to make cold calls to owners to try and spark a relationship and communicate something of value to where they at least agree to meet, and then the meeting, start that more personal relationship. But we really haven't discovered that the answer to that question. I would say, and it's hard for us to determine this on an interview, is I'd say the one common thread of our top agents is they're all terribly sore losers. Like they're so maniacally competitive, and a loss is so revolting and like sickening to them that they can't process or handle losing. I know it's like, to be called a sore loser is an insult. I just don't look at it that way. Like I'm a horribly sore loser, and when I lose, I really get angry and I go to a dark place, and I will do nothing to, whether it's learn a skill or have a better strategy, come back and beat whoever beat me. It's just, that's the way God made me. It is what it is. I'm sure there's a lot of psychology we could dive into over a beer later, but sore losers. I love them. I don't want to play them in, ping pong or basketball or anything, but I love to have them as teammates, because guess what? Sore losers hate losing so much. Guess what they tend to do? Win. They tend to win.
Yeah.
Because they can't lose, because it is such a shock to biological, mental, physical shock to them, that they will do whatever it takes to win. And whatever it takes to win in brokerage is show up at 5:45. It's make 500 cold calls a week. It is meet with anyone and everyone, whenever, wherever, however. It is go to 20 plus conferences a year. It is investing in your business. It is wearing a suit and tie. It is preparing multiple times, role playing before pitches are even done, so that you can flush out like potential objections ahead of time. It's all the crappy work of brokerage, the blocking and tackling that you don't want to do, because sore losers can't lose. It's too painful. So the most common thing I would say amongst the top agents, sore losers, how you find that out ahead of time. Generally speaking, it's hard. I'll tell you a program that works really well for us is our summer internship, Matthews University, which our new hires go through as well. It's a 60-day training. But one of the greatest values of this company is we put our summer interns through Matthews University. We train them as if they're new hires. And this year, I think we had 240 interns across the country. I mean, it was a big class. And 240 interns across, 70 universities and 20 different markets. And we love it. Because, we're training our new hires. We might as well train them. It's not a huge opportunity cost to add another 200 people, believe it or not, because everything we do here is scalable. However, for us, it's a 60-day job interview. You really get to know these candidates, and you get to introduce them to brokerage and all the amazingness of the industry, that what we all love about brokerage. Most of them say, wow, this really is great. This is what I want to do. And some of them self-select. They're like, hey, you know what? This was a great summer. This is not what I want to do. Guess what that just saved me? That saved me a 4-month quitter. Someone who's in the business 4 months, who we didn't have the internship, and they didn't know, and they thought they'd love it, but they didn't. And so the summer internship is a great way for us to flush out who the good candidates are, versus it's not even bad candidates. It's just who people where they're like, hey, I understand the upside. I understand you could create tremendous wealth. I understand you can meet amazing people and learn so much about real estate, which I think is one of the coolest industries. And by the way, real estate is one of the few industries that every single human being in this country is affected by, because, in theory, it's like everybody shops. not, up until COVID, a lot of people go to an office building. A lot of people order things on Amazon, the industrial side, and then a lot of people have apartments or homes. So I love real estate. We introduced them to it, but yeah, the summer internship is a great way for us to flush out who we want to hire and who we don't.
Great. I want to note, it seems as if they're competitive with themselves, probably with others as well, but you have a great culture, really familial environment. I wouldn't describe it as cutthroat or any backstabbing. So it seems as if that competition is within, they want to live up to their potential more so than competing with their neighbor.
Competition is huge. And this is something I got from Pete Carroll playing at USC. Like, it's funny, his name was Pete Carroll, but come Pete, it's like, so it was a big thing for him. I think he wrote a book, Always Compete, I want to say. Probably be mad if he was listening. No, I haven't read it, but I promise I will at some point. But yeah, being involved in that program was such a blessing because I got to see it firsthand. Unbeknownst to me, I was sitting there like watching how he ran this high performance program that basically won every game, right? But we had a great time. And so a lot of what I do here, now I'm aware of it, but even early on, like again, unbeknownst, I just didn't even understand where it was coming from. It's kind of what this is my gut intuition. No, it's like I was basically mimicking what Pete and the coaching staff there would do. And is promote competition at every turn, but not within the brokerage community. We don't compete for deals. I've been at companies where it's like, hey, you guys can compete for it. We don't do that. It's what we call sibling rivalry, right? It's you guys compete with each other every day. Have a call contest, have a meeting contest, have a proposal competition, and make it a competition where there's carrots and sticks. Whoever wins, the other guy buys them a beer. Like, whoever loses has to do a funny prank someone else thinks of, or whatever it is. Like the agents kind of figure it out. But we promote the spirit of sibling rivalry. I always say sibling rivalry, having siblings is like, there's a way to compete in the sense you want your siblings to be insanely successful. You want the world for them. You want them to be awesome. You want them to succeed. You want them to win, but you just want to be a little better, right? It's like, I've been at companies where the culture was, I want to be successful and this is a zero-sum game, therefore I need you to be not successful, right? And at Matthews, it's like, no, I want the guy next to me. I want the gal next to me to make $2, $3, $4 million next year. I just want to make one more dollar because I want to be number one, not because I want them as number two, but because this is important for me. So we very much create, foster, encourage an environment of friendly competition, like where you'd go out with your buddies. Like, it's funny, you go out with your friends and you'll create competition, but you're never like, oh, this is my competitor. Like, no, you do it for fun.
Yeah.
And when you lose, again, sore losers, you're not happy, but that in no way affects your friendship. And the best example I could use of Matthews, and I've never had anybody be able to tell me I'm wrong here, right? So convince me otherwise, is I tell them, I say, hey, listen, when I was at USC, I played safety. There were, at any given time, 6 to 8 other safeties, right? And let's just say free safety, or let's say I was a strong safety. As I got bigger, I moved to strong safety. So there were 4 strong safeties on the team. And in football, it is a zero-sum game. There's no other deal. Like in brokerage, like, oh, you won that deal, but I might win another. But in football, there's one player on the field. So it is zero-sum. But those 3 other strong safeties who I was competing with to get on the field, those were some of my closest friends in my life. I never had any animosity. I never had any resentment. Those were my brothers. Like they're my roommates. And every day while we're roommates, like we enjoyed each other's company, man. We had genuine love for each other. We would talk some shit like, oh man, I'm going to go out. I'm going to beat you. Like I'm going to be the star. Like, but I never looked at them like, you're doing this to me. Like you're taking something from me. So how in football, where it actually is more a zero-sum game than brokerage, could I have that love and affection for my teammate, but here you can't? No, it's bullshit. You can. And most people at Matthews get it, but even every now and then, if we have to just like sit someone down, I was like, look, that you don't need to have that mindset. And here's my analogy. No one's ever been saying, well, no, you're wrong. And no, it's just how they're viewing it. It's like, look, that the guy sitting next to you, yeah, he ended up he was number 1 in the contest. You were number 2. And I'm happy that, again, sore loser, you hate the feeling. But you're not a victim. It's not because of him. It's everything in your life is in your control. And that's what I learned at USC. And unfortunately, and fortunately, it was a blessing and a curse. I played with Troy Polamalu. You ever heard of that guy?
Of course.
NFL Hall of Famer.
Great hair.
Yeah, great hair. Yeah, that's true. It does have great hair. And him and Ed Reed, like the two best safeties in NFL history, modern era.
From the U, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. From the U. And I never looked at Troy like, you're the reason I'm not playing. It wasn't the culture at SC. It was like, I'm the reason I'm not playing. I got to be better than that guy. Now in football, maybe in brokerage, but in football, there just came a point where there was no amount of film I could watch. There was no amount of weights I could lift. There was no amount of running I could do to increase my speed to be better. He just, God made him different, man. And he just was better. And I never gave up. I never stopped. I never accepted that. But I never looked at him and said, you know what? Like, I fucking hate you. Like, cause I didn't. I love Troy. I still text with them a couple times a year. I saw him in New York a year or two ago, and we spent some time together. Like, and he's a wonderful guy. My point is, there's no reason that you can't have that environment in a professional setting. In fact, there's more reasons to have that environment in a professional setting than there is to have on a football field. Yet football gets it right. So why can't we get it right? And so that has driven my belief in how to build this company. It's really the ethos of this company. Yeah, you guys should compete to be starters. You guys should compete to own this market. You guys should compete to be the number one agent in your office or your product type or nationally. I want that. That's great. That's healthy competition. But his success is not mutually exclusive to yours and vice versa. And you guys, through competing with each other and pushing each other and challenging each other, and we do a lot of company competitions where we put them in this position, but we encourage them, hey guys, everybody in the office today has to find someone else and start a competition. I don't care if it's a push-up competition. I don't care if it's a call competition. I don't care if it's a competition of, who can get hung up on the most, like as a joke. Hopefully they're not doing that. But my point is, like, you got to compete. We encourage that, but we also constantly remind everyone that the success of your teammates is in no way exclusive to yours. In fact, it is an accelerator to yours, because when you're around success, you tend to rise to that success.
Well, you can definitely feel that team environment here, and I want to thank you again for hosting us in your office. And to that end, I've heard on the street that when you hire an agent from Matthews, you're really hiring the firm. You get the full muscle of that machine and that engine and this support, not just some lone wolf. So it certainly resonates.
Well, let me touch on that because, yes, from a culture standpoint, yeah, but let me just make it from an actual practical sense. We say all the time, like when you hire Matthews agent, you're actually hiring a company. And, I'll just tell you places that I worked, and I have a lot of teammates now that didn't necessarily start. A lot of Matthews is born and raised, and I think that's why the culture is so strong. But there's and every day it seems like they're coming through the door more and more. People reaching out like crazy right now, wanting to be part of this, wanting to be part of the energy, be part of the culture, but also be part of like the operational support system. That's where I'm going with this. Is when I was at previous companies, there was no real company behind you, So if you say, okay, like an owner says, hey, Kyle, I want you to put together a BOV. I want you to tell me what my property is worth. I more or less had to do all that. I had to create the package. In InDesign, I had to have my template. I probably have my own template. I had to underwrite it. And again, pulling comps, pricing deals, that's brokerage. You should always be doing that. I had to coordinate the ground and aerial photography. I had to decide if I even wanted to spend money on that. If I earned a listing, now it's like, okay, who do I send it out to? Do I pay for the RCM blast? Do I just send it to my Excel sheet via Constant Contact or MailChimp or, I'm trying to think of like email distributions. How much is that going to cost? Do I want to spend the money? Let's talk about the database. What is the database? It's just whoever I have personally researched, or maybe, best case scenario, I'm on a team of 5 other agents. They've been in the business longer than me. So now collectively we have 20,000 people. That's how the business has been, and believe it or not, and this is insane, is still more or less run across the industry. Even the big publicly traded brokerage companies is a bunch of agents and teams of agents, 2, 3, 4 guys working off an Excel sheet with their own little iteration of Salesforce CRM. That's it. And if they're not putting the packages together, it's because they hired someone and they're personally paying or contributing, which the worst part of that isn't the money, it's the time. They got to manage those people, and managing people it takes effort, it takes time. And it's all loss of time efficiency, which takes you away from the only thing you should really be doing as a broker, which is what we call RPAs, revenue producing activities, which is calling, meeting, pitching, and executing business. Like that's, that's the biggest change of Matthews is when you hire a Matthews agent, 95+% of their time, they actually get to spend on doing the job you hired them to do, which is selling your property, leasing your property, or finding you debt, because they have a massive, massive support platform behind them that just doesn't exist at other companies, period, full stop. Like, this is what I do for a living. I know, so that's, I would say, the biggest, look, what has contributed in 8.5 years since we were founded, my understanding is we're the largest privately held brokerage company in North America at this point. How did we get there? We're self-funded, zero investment, zero debt, nothing, just homegrown through our own free cash flow. Like, how do we do that? It's not just because we work really hard. We work harder than anyone else, right? It's not just because we have a great culture. We have better culture than anyone else. It's also the platform, the support, the operational efficiency that is created for agents on their behalf by awesome teammates on the platform side.
Great. I can feel the evil eye coming from our production team over here who wanted a lot of real estate questions.
We have about 10 minutes, and I want to be super respectful of your time. So I feel like we could do kind of just like an overarching, quick take state of the market. What are your thoughts? And then we could do sign-offs.
Great.
I think what we have is so good. I don't want to distract from it too much.
She says that to everybody, but go ahead.
She does. Let's get into real estate a little bit. You have a really unique view into the market. You have a lot of data at your hands, boots on the ground. You have an army out there. There's a lot publicized about the state of the industry. What do you see? What's your sentiment? Obviously, it's complex, depends on the property type in the market. I'll get into those in a little more of like a rapid fire way, but just generally, what do you see in the commercial real estate industry today?
Yeah, it's brutal, man. It's tough. Like in our business, in the transaction side, depending whether you're looking at Green Street or CoStar or RCA, which I think is MSCI now, reports, transaction velocity is down between 60 to 75%, depending on, are you looking at institutional, sub-institutional product type? And we could talk specifics. Like, it is a really, really historically tough time right now in the brokerage space from an investment sales standpoint. We are doing significantly better than that, and I'm very excited to say that. We are still growing. We are financially doing very, very well, and I think some of that is work ethic, some of that is platform, some of that is, I say a little luck. We don't do a lot of office. We don't do almost any office, so office is like, there's a bomb dropped over office right now, and we can talk further. But yeah, it's a really, really tough time out there. And even our guys, they got to battle harder for less deals. They got to manage expectations more. They got to work harder for the same paycheck. There's 2020. I always tell people, like, you probably weren't as good as you thought you were in 21, and you're definitely not as bad as you think you are in 23, right? And there is one reason for this, and it is cost of capital. It is the Fed raising rates faster than they have, I think, in 43 years. So I think by definition, that is a black swan event. This is one of those markets that agents today will big brother agents in 10 years say, oh yeah, you think it's bad now. You should have been there in 2023 and 22, 3, and even into 24 when the Fed raised rates 525 basis points in 15 months. Like, that is a big deal. And when, cap rates, depending on product type, are 4, 5s, and 6s because debt's 2, 3, and 4, and then all of a sudden debt becomes 6, 7s, and 8s, cap rates can't be at 4, 5s, and 6s. They have to go up materially, and that is a slow process that takes tremendous time, exacerbated by non-motivated sellers who eventually just pull out of the market, and exacerbated by just a lot of brokers who fundamentally aren't sound, but they were able to make money over the last, respectfully, 10 years. COVID was a start-stop, 3-4 months. But the market came back so fast that unless you panic quit in COVID, you really haven't been through a tough market since 2010. And so we have brokers, we in the industry, Matthew's only been around 8 years, so we have brokers in the industry who are 12 years in making $2 million a year who have never, ever, ever experienced this. And they have no idea what to do, right? And their businesses are down 70, 80, 90%. They've never managed price expectations. They've never had to battle just for one buyer to hang on for deal life and escrow. They've never had to ask really difficult questions up front of buyers to vet to keep deals from falling out. They've never not had lenders. right? And it's not just the asset level debt, whether it's purchase debt or refinancing. It's the cost of equity has gone up significantly. There's still a lot of dry powder that wants to go into real estate, but even with yields aside, they're a little nervous. And so it is a really, really hard time. You know, this is, if you're a killer, if you are committed to being successful in real estate, whether you're a principal, whether you're a broker, any service provider, this is what you should want. I know that sounds crazy. I didn't understand the GFC. I had a senior agent, senior management saying, Kyle, this is going to be the best thing that ever happened to you. And my hand to God said, you're fucking lying, man. This is not good. And it wasn't until after we came out of it, I was like, they were right. It was the best thing ever happened to me, because the deals go away. 90% of the deals go away. 90% of the brokers eventually go away. The deals come back. Those 90% of brokers don't come back. They're gone. And it takes a long time to fill up the broker bucket. And so that 2, 3, 4 year period coming out of a really bad velocity recession like we're in today, that's the gold rush. So you got to hang in there. You can't quit, right? Well, you quit, you're a quitter. I keep saying this. Nobody wants to be a quitter. At least when I was growing up, that was an insult. That was a really bad insult. Still is in my book. And you got to hang in there. And, you know, it's funny. I moved to Nashville 4 years ago from LA, and I live just outside the city on a bunch of land. And so I drive by, the first 15 minutes of my drive to work in the morning, or my last 15 is farms. Like, there's a lot of equestrian properties, but there's farming. And you learn a lot living out in the country. You learn a lot. And what you see is there's more activity on the farms in the winter than there is in the summer. It's in the winter that they're tilling the soil and, fertilizing and, putting nitrogen back in the soil, spraying for weeds, like rowing it up. And it's, February, March, maybe March, April, where they're planting the seeds. Again, it's not warm out. The sun's not out. It's winter. It's not good weather. But that's when you do all the dirty work so that one day when the sun's out, you can eat and eat a lot. And it's in the spring, in the summer, all the way up until the weather turns again in the fall. Like, you just kind of let it grow. And right now, metaphorically, it's the winter. And if you don't know any better, that's very depressing and demoralizing. Oh, it's a bad time. No. This is the time. This is the time that you till the soil, which is your submarket. It is the time that you plant the seeds, which are the relationships with your owners. This is the time that you put yourself in the position to have the most unbelievable harvest you ever could imagine. And you feed your family for generations. It is this time. It is not when it's good. When it's good, anybody can get into brokerage. Your competition floods the market. You reduce your fees. You overprice your deals because, you have to. But now this is when the really, really, really good brokers show themselves. And there is a pot of gold at the end of this rainbow you can't even imagine.
Great. So let's speed round the property types. Just a quick thought, quick sentence, quick soundbite on each one. There's still a few questions left on this, but I think this will be good first. Retail.
Awesome. Negative construction over the last 15 years, positive net absorption, lowest vacancy rates in modern history, I would say, rental growth, and any tenants paying rent that have been around survived the GFC, Amazon apocalypse, and COVID. They are incredibly well-run, viable businesses. Even the few businesses, the legacy businesses that need to go bankrupt, the Bed Baths, when they went bankrupt, a good buddy of mine runs a big public REIT, and we were talking about this. Bed Bath gave back a bunch of space. They released it for 31% on average higher rents. So even your downside is your upside. Retail, never a better time to be in retail, and it's been 15 long years where I've waited to say that.
Office. Sucks.
It's tough. I love office. I love coming to the office every day. I love dressing like a professional. You dress casual, you work casual, right? But there are some fundamental product challenges with office, starting with COVID. And I don't believe most jobs are meant to be work from home, but I absolutely recognize some jobs can totally be a work from home without productivity loss. I think most jobs you do lose productivity at home. This is my opinion. I think there's a report that came out that 18% productivity loss on average. That's not surprising, but there are some jobs that productivity loss. But there are people who, married 2 jobs, they have kids, no child, now that they've gotten a taste of working from home, it makes their life easier. There's just a percentage of the market will never come back to office, whether it's 10 or 20 or 30 or 40% of workers, right? I think a lot of people will. On top of that, this is, I'm not going to dip my toe in the political arena, but there are some insanely bad decisions being made by cities, specifically heavily blue cities like a Chicago, a San Francisco, LA, New York, when it comes to crime and homelessness. Again, I'm not offering an opinion on it in terms of the policies. I'm just stating the outcome, which is it is making people uncomfortable to come into urban core business districts, urban office. Suburban office, fine, but most office is urban, and it is making people uncomfortable to come down to work there or to live there, and so that's increasing the exodus. And so I do think eventually there's a place for office. I think it's going to be much like retail. It's been like a 10, 15-year finding itself. I think office is just beginning its 10 to 15-year journey to finding what the next iteration of office looks like.
Industrial and warehouse.
Best looking person at the bar. Everybody wants to talk to him. Everybody wants to be in an industrial. I have a lot of friends who own industrial. They're going to be offended that I say it. Anyone in industrial over the last 10 years looks smart, looks like a hero. It's like one of those rising tides lift all boats. Now there's better industrial owner operators. There's better industrial investors, and there's some bad ones, but even the bad ones have made a lot of money.
Multifamily.
Tale of two cities. And it seems to kind of swing in TikTok, like multifamily in the Southeast and pro-growth states, and was the belle of the ball for like the last 10 years, right? Even during COVID, it was great. And now I think there's inherent challenges with a lot of the deals, the Class B suburban or Class B garden style, where somebody bought a deal for $40 million, put high levered, assuming there's rent growth, adjustable rate mortgage to get a lower teaser rate. They're in bad trouble. I think a lot of Class A multifamily developers are in big trouble refinancing out of their bridge or construction debt in a lot of those growth cities. And on the flip side, there's, let's call them blue cities, where because of that, it's been very hard to build. So they're not oversupplied. They still have tremendous rent growth. But the question is, can you get to the rent growth? Because most of those cities have rent control, rent stabilization, vacancy control. And so multifamily is very, very market specific.
Hospitality out of bounds. I know, kind of a little more esoteric.
Yeah, we don't do a lot of hospitality. We do hospitality, but it's mostly smaller product. And what I know of hospitality is what I read about, that it's actually doing very well. I think it will be one of the first economic indicators that suggest we are shifting, which I personally believe the economy is shifting. I'll go on offer prediction. I think we will be in a recession next year. I don't think it's going to be terrible, but I think it will be one. And I think this is just an opinion that hospitality is it's had a nice little run post COVID, but I think a report just came out that in Q3 of this year, I think the Fed said Americans will have more or less gone through their excess COVID savings. We have $1 trillion for the first time ever, $1 trillion in credit card debt, and credit card interest is very expensive. We have student debt restarting after 18, 24 months of it being paused. So you have a lot of negative factors that impact whether people blow money on vacations. And so I think if you're in hotels and you've executed your value add strategy, now is the time to sell. I know interest rates don't necessarily help you out there, but I'm pessimistic on hospitality over the next 12, 24 months.
All right. Well, it's almost time. I'm going to do a rapid fire pop culture speed round. I hope you're ready. 1-word answers, and then we'll let you go back to building a great business.
Mm-hmm.
Favorite movie?
Step Brothers.
Favorite restaurant and or best place for a closing dinner?
Nobu in Malibu.
I know the answer to the next question. I was amazed. I learned it last night. First concert?
New Kids on the Block.
Any quotes that you think help define your life? Can always take the pass if you want.
No.
Okay.
I'll have to come back to that one.
All right, no worry.
The one I always think of is the Man in the Arena. It's a very common one, but it's a very long one by Teddy Roosevelt.
Great quote. And that's
it's just like a paragraph. So I was like, well, I can't provide it off the top of my head.
We'll let you recite it another time for us. What kind of music do you listen to today?
It depends on the mood. I go between and how many kids are in the car, right? If it's just me in the car, I might have some hip hop, with some bad language. But if my kids are in the car, it's usually some country. The EDM, they like house music, pop music. I have 4 kids, 2 daughters, 9 and 6, and fortunately or unfortunately, I am now getting into Taylor Swift, right? So I don't necessarily like the music, but my daughters do, and it's a small sacrifice to pay to make them happy.
Great. We have a very young audience, I like to think. I think it's ages across the board, but certainly some young listeners trying to break into the industry. Any last advice for a young listener maybe interested in getting into the industry or just starting their career?
Yeah, just starting their career. It's not unique to real estate. Again, I've only been in real estate, but I don't think people would disagree with what I'm about to say. Every industry is hard. Every job is hard. Every job carries its benefits and its drawbacks. And what I'd tell you is if you want to live an extraordinary life, then you must expect extraordinary sacrifice. And you don't get all the upside in life without a downside. You don't get to create crazy wealth. You don't get all these wild things and these trips and this lifestyle that you envision for yourself without giving something up. And generally speaking, it's early in your career. You've got to front load your career in terms of time invested, whether it's in brokerage, whether it's you're a teacher or you're in finance or you're a mechanic. It doesn't matter what you do. If you want to be great at something, and with great, oftentimes in a profession, being great at something comes with great wealth. And that's at least often the motivation in your 20s. Like, you have to be willing, you have to be prepared, you have to accept, and you have to be willing to put in tremendous effort and energy, which that time has to come from somewhere. And it's going to come from working out. It's going to come from socializing with your buddies. It's going to come from work-life balance and all that. It's going to come from somewhere. Or, I said this the other day. I said, you got to choose your hard life. All right? Because someone might say, hey, you got to, from 22 to 35, you're going to work 80 hours a week, right? I'm just generalizing here. But by doing that, it's going to set you up to live whatever life you want. And they'd be like, that's so hard. And I said, no doubt. Working 13, 14, 15 years where all you do is work, let's call it, that is really hard. But you know what sounds harder to me? Working 40 hours a week for 40 years and basically always having to tell yourself no because you can't afford something. Hey, and like you sit there and you say, oh, you can't afford the nice vacation, you can't afford the nice watch. Like, that's bullshit. You don't need those things. How about you have some brilliant kid and the best school in town costs $40,000 a year as a private school, and you say, I can't send them there. So no matter what, that to me is much harder than working 80 hours a week when I have no responsibility, respectfully. So no matter what, you got to choose your hard life. Okay? That's how I always looked at it. And when I had to say, okay, I could do this I could just kind of punch the clock and do 40 hours and just exist, or I could front load and give up so much, but then I could really kind of dictate the terms and live the life I dream of living. That was an easy choice for me. And I'm, in many ways, on the other side now. It was the best choice I ever made. And it wasn't just me. It was my wife and I made it together because my sacrifice is hers and hers is mine. So it's, you got to choose your hard life. And what I tell you, if you're getting in the business, toughen the fuck up. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. You're not a victim. Life's not fair. And if anyone ever told you it should be, they're fucking liars. Excuse my language. They're liars. That's bullshit. And they're lying to you either because they don't care about you or someone told them that and they're a victim. And so just get ready for it. Life can be amazing. You can do great things. Everyone is capable, definitely within brokerage, of being amazing and basically laying out the life they want to live. But you got to sacrifice for it. So prepare yourself for that, or prepare yourself for your average life. Either way, it's going to be hard. Choose your hard life. Toughen up.
Well put. We're getting the wrap it up signals. The notorious Kyle Matthews. Thank you very much. All the listeners should Listen to the Matthews Mentality, one of the best commercial real estate.
One of the best. What's up with that?
Well, Crexi's pretty good too,
Yeah,
but you've got a great podcast. Appreciate it. Also, sign in Twitter. Zach can give all those handles. I don't have them offhand.
Instagram, LinkedIn, Kyle Matthews CEO.
Kyle
right.
Matthews CEO. TikTok coming soon. Maybe not. Well, I know you've got
Chinese are tracking me. I don't want to be on that.
Yeah, I know you've got a long, busy day already, and appreciate all the time you gave us. Also appreciate your hospitality in your studios. So thank you very much. Pleasure. Thanks to everyone listening, and we'll see you next time.